All right, so now I want to go to Hebrews chapter 9. I'm going to read Hebrews chapter 9 and try to get through that and just give you more of an explanation so you can see, the old covenant. Okay, so Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1. Then verily the first covenant had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. Okay, so because God is telling all the particulars on how to operate the tabernacle back then, okay, in the first covenant, okay. In verse 2, for there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. Okay, so if you see, I can't explain the whole thing from the Old Testament, so you have to go back and read it. But okay, so there's the tabernacle made first, where there's the candlestick, because God gave all the commands of all the particulars of what to do in this tabernacle, what to put in there, and how to build everything. Okay, all right. So verse 3, and after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all. Okay, because right, so after the second veil, so because there's a veil on the outside and there's a veil in the inner sanctuary, where there's what we say about the veil was torn in half when Jesus died on the cross. Remember we talked about that? So the veil that surrounds the holiest of all. Okay, so that's where only the high priest would go in there, and he would talk with God alone. Okay, and it's saying in verse 3 that was called the holiest of all. Okay, in verse 4, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had the manna. All right, if you remember in Moses' time, God provided the manna to eat in the wilderness. Okay, so the ark of the covenant's in there. It's got the manna in there, and then you'll read about Aaron's rod that budded and the tables of the covenant. So all these things are in there. Verse 5, and over it the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. So you don't know all the exact details of it now. Okay, in verse 6, now when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of God. Because all these things were ordained of God back then, because this is the type and shadows of things to come, when Jesus was going to be the perfect sacrifice. Okay. In verse 7, but into the second went the high priest alone once every year. Remember we talked? Once a year. Not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the errors of the people. Right? So that's what I'm saying. The high priest alone would go into the holy of holiest, the most holy. After they would do the sacrifice, and he would have to take the blood, and he would go in through the veil by himself and offer the sacrifice. Okay, so oops. Okay. All right.